please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
A very good afternoon. Welcome to Your Stocks. I'm Nigel D'Souza. With me is Ekta Batra. And things not looking good in today's trading session. We're under some pressure. The key culprit on the downside is the Nifty Bank. That one's taking a bit of a knock, and a whole host of stocks are taking a whack out there. Just looking at some data. In fact, Axis Bank is now below that 525 odd level. That's the level at which they did a preference share issue to Bain Capital, to LIC as well. So things not look going well. PNB as well. Remember, they had issued some shares. They've done a QIP at a much higher price. And in fact, now the stock is trading below that 100 rupees odd mark. It's seen a bit of recovery though from the low point of the day. The Nifty Bank on the whole is down more than 400 points odd, and that's really been the big drag. Thank God really for Infosys. That's holding one end up, and that's preventing us from totally falling apart. Hey, Ekta.
Hi, Nigel. Well, absolutely. Well, if you look at it on a month-to-date basis, it's PNB is obviously the top loser when it comes to banks, but you can't really ignore what's happened to State Bank of India, which has lost 15% month-to-date. You can't ignore what's happened to Axis Bank, which has lost 12 odd percent, ICICI Bank, which has lost around 12 odd percent. So all of these have cumulatively become a couple of the top losers on the Nifty on a month-to-date basis. So there's definitely some amount of concern which is spilling over to the private bank and the larger banks such as State Bank of India as well. So you can see that continuous weakness come in, and that's prevalent in today's trading session as well. Axis, for example, down 2.7 like Nigel mentioned, and ICICI, which is at the low point of the day. HDFC Bank too, which is down around 1 odd percent. But these are the top stories we're tracking this afternoon, and we're going to get going in terms of the queries that you guys have as well. Global weakness spills over on Dalal Street as key indices slip over 0.5% each. Nifty Bank takes a knock as the index slips 1.5%.
And new Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, in his maiden congressional testimony, signaled that the Fed could keep interest rates higher to contain inflation, yields, as well as the dollar rise after his statements.
Well, it's not a good day for corporate private sector lenders as ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank take a hit. PSU Bank sees some short covering. The Nifty Bank trades with a cut of over 1%.
And Rajesh Gopinathan, MD and CEO of India's largest IT company TCS, completed 1 year at the top chair last week. In an exclusive interview with CNBC TV18, he says that the company will continue to grow ahead of industry average. Also confirms that consolidation of the group's IT companies is not on the group's agenda.
Okay, and reports indicate the Finance Ministry has approved vehicle scrapping policy to scrap commercial vehicles older than 15 years. Document will now go to GST Council, which will fix concessions by states and centres. Okay, well, those were the top stories that we're tracking, but let's get to a CNBC TV18 exclusive this afternoon. Then we gather from sources that the cabinet is yet to take a call on setting up the National Financial Reporting Authority. Timsi Jaipuria joins in with all of the details on this story. Hi, Timsi, go ahead.
Yes, as you rightly said, the cabinet is yet to take a call on it. It was up on the agenda for the cabinet discussion today, and it was most likely about to get approved, but it wasn't taken up in the cabinet today. Cabinet wants to take a calculative call, and there wasn't enough time for the cabinet to discuss it in detail, which is why cabinet decided to keep it as a deferred item, and now MCA will put it again for cabinet's consideration in the next cabinet meeting. Now remember, this is a very crucial authority which will be now set up to keep the role of auditors under government's check. This regulatory body will check the role of auditors, CAs, etc., especially in today's time where we are learning about frauds, etc., bank frauds, and where Finance Minister has rightly said that the role of auditors need to be checked. And very clearly also to put this authority in place, this authority should have been set up long back. It is under Companies Act, it is mandated under Companies Act that such an authority should be set up, but due to a lot of confusion, due to a lot of back and forth in the government, this authority was not created till now. It wasn't being set up. Even the cabinet note was floated quite late. And remember, the finance minister is also corporate affairs minister, and he's now pushing up to set up this authority. Most likely in the next meeting, it is likely to go through. And then after Cabinet's nod, it will be a proper regulatory authority that will be set up by the government to check the role of especially CAs, auditors, the audit firms, etc., which could be under this regulatory authority's ambit.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks so much, Dempsey, for joining in and giving us all those details. By the way, in that interim, we had a bit of a recovery in the markets because a few stocks are moving higher. Asian Paint should come up for you on the screen. That stock is spiking up. In fact, there's a sharp spike that we're seeing on that stock. And the Nifty Bank as well has recovered nearly around 100 points from the low point of the day. That's because of a couple of stocks. ICICI Bank is pulling back a tad bit, and even SBI is pulling back a tad bit. So at the low point of the day, we were moving towards the 25,000 odd mark. There's a bit of a recovery that we're seeing in ICICI Bank, in SBI as well. And Hindalco is the other stock that is seeing a bit of a recovery over there. So good to see some bit of recovery with the Bank Nifty taking a bit of a whack. Some of these stocks like Asian Paints, you have Infosys, all of them are contributing on the upside. Even Hindalco has recovered from the low point of the day. But there are plenty of queries that we have to answer, so let's get straight to that. Let's pull in our guests first. Shaina Mukaddam as well as Sandeep Bagle join us to help us answer all your queries. Good afternoon, Shaina as well as Sandeep. Thanks so much for joining in today. Well, our first query is already with us. We have Amita, who writes to us from Mumbai, holds 200 shares of Fortis Healthcare at around 100 rupees since the last 3 years. Long-term investor wants to know whether or not to hold or to sell. Shaina, coming across to you first. Lucky, I mean, the buy price is around 100. Otherwise, we're seeing the stock moving 50 rupees, on a week-to-week basis as well. Sitting on a 50% return for the last 3 years, that is. Your take, being a long-term investor, hold on or sell out?
I personally hold, and I think it's better to continue holding at current levels. I think the fluctuation that we saw, the volatility in the stock price was more to do with the promoter group, which now is I think no longer going to be the issue out here. In fact, we're looking at the company going into stronger hands, and that would be a positive, because this business includes, I think, over 4,500 beds, and plus their diagnostic business. The two of them together, I think there is more value, because if you see the EV, it's around 8,700 crores. So I think even on an EV per bed, even if you leave the diagnostic business out, I think there is value at the current levels, which is slightly above the 150 mark. So I would continue holding and hope that the earlier highs that we saw for the stock a couple of months back is likely to happen over the next 6 months or a year.
Okay, and it's quite an important day in terms of the fate and the history of Fortis Healthcare, because they are expected to be releasing their Q2 as well as Q3 numbers today. So there is that board meet which is scheduled. But Sandeep, what would your view be on Fortis, technically?
Well, I think in the range of 160, 170, some profit should be booked. In the last 6 months, we have seen the stock test those levels and come down drastically to maybe 110, 105. Book profits, there will be a chance to re-enter again at 120, 125.
Okay, all right. So that's the view coming in on Fortis. That stock has lost on a year-to-date basis, but just see the kind of volatility that it's seen based on all of the news that we worked with in the past couple of weeks itself. But for the Nifty, it's just about, we're sub 10,500, so 10,490 is where we're at. But that seems to be quite a pivot point for today's trading session, that particular level, 10,500. So let's see whether we manage to close at that level or maybe a little above that for today. Otherwise, Bank Nifty is really the key reason why you're seeing the kind of declines that you are. That continues to sulk down around 1.3%. Take a break, but more queries on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Well, it seems as though the IT index is the only index which is actually trading in the green today. So it should come up for you up around 0.6% at this point. And that's primarily with what's happening with a couple of stocks such as Infosys. Look at the kind of move that we've seen on that one now at the high point of the day, up around 2.7%. So that's primarily the kind of strength that we're seeing in the Nifty IT index. And besides that, TechM just about trading with a gain of around 0.3% at this point in time. So that's providing some amount of leadership, you'd have to say, for today. But let's get in another query now. We have Shivani, who writes to us from Jaipur. She holds 100 shares of Tata Motors DVR, which she's bought at 245 since the past 2 months. Medium-term investor, wants to know whether to hold or sell. Currently sitting on a loss. Shaina, what would you recommend to Shivani? She's a medium-term investor. Hold on. Do you think Tata Motors DVR can get back at least to her buy price, or do you think she should even average at current levels?
Yeah, I personally hold this stock also. And what I see is that the stock has been very weak. I think this is more to do with the weakness we've seen in the overall global sales in the last month in January, and also the problems that they're having in Europe. So while the domestic market continues to do very well, and we have seen a very good increase in their overall volumes coming on back of new launches, I think the global markets is a bit sluggish for them as of now. But at the same time, I think this stock has really been an underperformer over the last year. And if you look at growth, I think over the next 1 year, it is going to be one of the best performing in the four-wheelers in terms of overall percentage growth on a low base. So I would continue holding this stock. I do hope that the investor will get back her buying price. I would keep a stop loss of 195 and look for a target of close to 275.
Okay, all right then. Stop loss at 195 is the level that Shaina is talking about. But by the way, I think we've got a bit of a recovery going on. Let's just pull out the PSU banking index. That should come up for you. That will give you the real picture. A lot of these PSU banking stocks are recovering. Our ticker team as well is keeping it alive. So keep an eye out on a few of these stocks. A good recovery is what we are seeing. The mid cap index, mind you, now it's down only around 0.2%. So I'll rate this day actually as a good trading session, at least till now. We're down 60 points, yes, 55 to around 60 points, but you got your stocks right and you'll be making some good money. Few stocks that are doing well, from the broader markets, even from the frontliner stocks like Asian Paints, they've given you that dip. ICICI Motors as well has done quite well. And Infosys, now at around 1,185. Remember, it's only around 30 rupees away from its 52-week high of around 1,1220, and it's moving with strength. So just keep an eye out on that stock. But I think we have a next caller that's there. Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll slip into a short break. You come back and then we'll focus on all your queries. We'll also keep an eye out on the markets. Welcome back then. As our ticker team's keeping it alive, the markets are off the low point of the day. But another query has come in. Vamsi writes to us from Bangalore. He holds around 1,000 shares of Future Consumer at around 70 bucks since the last 2 months. But short-term investors wants to know whether or not to sell out or in fact hold on, making a bit of a loss of around 11,000 rupees. Sandeep, what would your advice be to Vamsi?
Nigel, in this kind of a market, I see some more downside in the Nifty as well. So the stock can't be spared. I would use any bit of a bounce back or up move to exit as of now. And that range could be anywhere between 66 to 68. I think that would be a good exit. On the downside, a stop loss of 54 should be added to.
Okay, well, we need to take a break now, but more queries once we're back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Well, we have another query now before we can touch upon how exactly the markets are doing. So let's do that. Rakesh Jain writes to us from Jodhpur. He holds 50 shares of Lupin at 859 since the past 5 months. Short-term investor and wants to know whether to hold or sell that particular stock. Well, Shaina, short-term investor. So I'm going to try and get a comment from Sandeep, but I wanted your view. Even if someone has a short-term horizon, you think Lupin is a hold?
I think short term the charts look weak, so I would prefer that he follows technical charts if he's really short term. But for the longer term, I think as we all have been discussing, there's a lot of pain in the US markets in terms of pricing, which are also likely to continue. But I think over a period of time, the company will be launching new products, and as and when there's resolution of its plants, I think the growth should again kick back into the numbers. So if you're a long term holder, I would suggest to continue holding. I see value over the longer term period, but in short term I think the charts are weak.
Sandeep?
I would agree with China. I would recommend a sell on a bounce back in the range of 840, 850. And on the downside, if that doesn't come in, 810 should be a stop loss. If 810 is taken out, maybe even 730, 740 is possible. So exit would be, or sell on a bounce back would be my recommendation.
Okay, all right. So that's the view coming in on Lupin. But just talking about the markets, it seems as though the Bank Nifty is recovering a little bit in terms of its the bounce back from the lows. So it's down around 1% as compared to around 1.5% in terms of a fall when we started the show. And the Nifty is back above 10,500 as we speak. Infosys is really top of the charts this afternoon. That stock is almost up around 3%. It's a wrap on your stocks. Do remember, you can keep sending us all of your queries. Closing bell is up next.